When Victoria Hale's driver pulled up to the snow-buried mansion she'd just purchased in Aspen, the last person she expected to see shoveling the driveway across the street was Mason Reed, the man she'd loved in silence through 4 years of college, the one whose engagement to someone else had shattered her quietly, the same person whose divorce she'd read about in a gossip column 2 years ago while sitting alone in her own failing marriage. Their eyes met across 20 feet of frozen asphalt. Neither moved. 10 years of buried feelings hung in the winter air between them, and Victoria realized with sudden, terrifying clarity that running away to the mountains hadn't put enough distance between her and the past. Some things, apparently, don't stay buried. If you want to see how this impossible reunion changes everything, stick around until the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The shovel hit the pavement with a scraping sound that cut through the morning silence. Mason Reed had been clearing his driveway since 5:30, working in the dark because Chloe's school bus came at 7:15 no matter how much snow fell overnight, and the plow trucks didn't give a damn about his quiet residential street. His hands ached inside his work gloves. His lower back was screaming. He was 32 years old and felt 50. He straightened up, pressing one palm against his spine, and that's when he saw the convoy. 3 vehicles coming down Snowmass Road. A black Mercedes G-Wagon in front, a moving truck behind it, and another SUV bringing up the rear. They slowed as they approached the Henderson place, the massive log and stone mansion across the street that had sat empty for 8 months since the previous owners moved to Jackson Hole. Mason went back to shoveling. Rich people buying second homes wasn't exactly breaking news in Aspen. The G-Wagon pulled into the circular driveway. The truck rumbled to a stop behind it. Mason kept working, trying to finish before Chloe woke up and came downstairs asking for pancakes he didn't have time to make. Then the driver's door of the G-Wagon opened. Mason's shovel stopped mid-scrape. The woman who stepped out wore a long black coat that probably cost more than his truck, boots that definitely did, and sunglasses even though the sun hadn't cleared the mountains yet. Her dark hair was pulled back. She moved with the kind of confidence that money bought, or maybe just the kind some people were born with. She pulled off the sunglasses. Mason felt the cold air go out of his lungs. Victoria Hale, no way, not possible. But it was. Same sharp cheekbones, same dark eyes that always looked like they were analyzing everything. Same way of standing perfectly still while the world moved around her. She hadn't seen him yet. She was talking to the driver, gesturing toward the house, her breath visible in the freezing air. Mason should have gone inside, should have grabbed his shovel and disappeared before she turned around. Instead, he just stood there like an idiot, watching the ghost of his 22-year-old self walk across the street and tap him on the shoulder. Remember her? Remember what you never said? Victoria turned. Their eyes met. Mason watched her face do something complicated. Surprise, then recognition, then something else he couldn't read. She didn't move. Neither did he. 10 years collapsed into 10 seconds. Then Chloe's voice came from inside the house. "Daddy, I can't find my snow boots." The spell broke. Victoria looked away first, turning back to the driver. Mason forced himself to breathe, picked up his shovel, and headed for the front door. His hands were shaking. 30 minutes later, Mason was scrambling eggs while Chloe sat at the kitchen table in her purple pajamas, swinging her legs and explaining in great detail why her friend Emma was basically the worst person ever invented. "She said my drawing looked like a blob monster," Chloe said, deeply offended. "But it was supposed to be a horse." "Maybe it was a blob monster disguised as a horse," Mason said, scraping eggs onto her plate. "That doesn't even make sense." "Doesn't it?" Chloe considered this. "No." Mason smiled despite himself. This was the only part of his day that didn't feel like maintenance. These 15 minutes before the bus came, when his daughter was still small enough to think he was funny. The divorce had been finalized 18 months ago. Joint custody, alternating weeks, all very civilized. Rachel had remarried already, some guy who worked in tech and owned a place in Vail. Chloe seemed fine with it, which was both a relief and a small, irrational wound Mason tried not to examine too closely. "Eat your eggs," he said. "They're too yellow." "That's what color eggs are." "Not this yellow." Mason didn't have the energy. "Toast?" "With the regular butter, not the fancy butter." He had no idea what that meant, but he made toast. Through the kitchen window, he could see the moving truck across the street. Workers were unloading furniture. Expensive-looking furniture, the kind designed by Scandinavian minimalists whose names Mason couldn't pronounce. Victoria hadn't come back outside. He told himself he wasn't looking for her. Chloe followed his gaze. Who's moving in? I don't know. Did you see them? Briefly. Are they nice? Mason thought about Victoria standing in the snow, looking at him like she'd seen a ghost. I don't know yet. I hope they have a dog, Chloe said. Emma has a dog. That's basically the only good thing about her. The bus horn honked outside. Chloe grabbed her backpack and ran for the door, trailing her coat behind her. Mason helped her into it, zipped it up, kissed the top of her head. She tolerated this with the weary patience of someone much older. Love you, he said. Love you too. Don't forget I have soccer. I won't. She was halfway down the driveway when she turned and shouted, And I need poster board for my project. Then she was gone, climbing onto the bus with a half-dozen other kids who looked equally exhausted by existence. Mason stood in the doorway, watching the bus pull away. When he turned back toward the house, Victoria was standing in her driveway. She changed into jeans and a heavy sweater. Her hair was down now. She was holding a coffee cup, steam rising from it. She lifted one hand in a small wave. Mason's brain went blank. He managed to raise his own hand. It felt awkward. Everything felt awkward. Victoria started walking toward him. Oh, hell. Mason's first instinct was to retreat into the house and pretend he hadn't seen her. His second instinct was to stand there and wait. His third instinct was to wonder why his heart was beating this fast over someone he hadn't thought about in years. Except that was a lie. He'd thought about her. Victoria stopped at the end of his driveway, close enough to talk, far enough to escape. Hi, she said. Her voice hadn't changed, still low, still precise. Hi, Mason said. Silence. A car drove past. Somewhere down the street, someone was running a snowblower. Small world, Victoria said finally. Yeah. More silence. I didn't know you lived here, she said. I didn't know you were moving here. It's temporary. Mason nodded. He had no idea what to do with his hands. Victoria took a sip of coffee, looking uncomfortable in a way he'd never seen her look. Victoria Hale didn't do uncomfortable. She was the person in college who could walk into a room full of architecture professors and start debating load-bearing calculations like she'd written the textbook. I should let you get back to your morning, she said. Yeah, I've got... Mason gestured vaguely at nothing. Things. Right. She turned to leave. Victoria. She stopped. Mason didn't know what he was going to say until he said it. It's good to see you. Something shifted in her expression. You too. Then she walked back across the street, and Mason went inside and stood in his kitchen for 5 full minutes, staring at nothing. Cats. The coffee shop was called Grateful Bread, which Mason had always found aggressively Colorado. He'd been coming here 3 mornings a week for the past year, ever since he realized that working from home meant never actually leaving home. He was a structural engineer, freelance, which sounded more impressive than it was. Mostly he reviewed blueprints for contractors who'd already made up their minds and just needed someone with a license to sign off. The pay was decent. The work was boring. It kept the lights on. He set up his laptop at his usual table in the back corner and tried to focus on the renovation plans for a house in Snowmass Village. The architect had specified floor-to-ceiling windows on a slope that got 6 feet of snow accumulation. Mason was writing polite notes about how that was a terrible idea when someone sat down across from him. Victoria. She had a laptop bag over her shoulder and a fresh coffee in her hand. I'm not following you, she said. I know how this looks. Mason blinked. What? I needed somewhere to work and the internet at the house isn't set up yet, and this was the first place I found. She paused. But if this is your spot, I can leave. No, stay. It's fine. She hesitated, then set down her bag and sat. They worked in silence for 20 minutes. Mason tried to concentrate on load-bearing calculations, but his brain kept wandering to the woman sitting 3 feet away. Victoria was typing quickly, frowning at her screen, occasionally making notes on a legal pad with handwriting he remembered. Small, precise, engineer's script. Finally, she looked up. Can I ask you something? Sure. What are you doing in Aspen? Mason leaned back. I live here. I mean, why? You grew up in Chicago, right? He was surprised she remembered. My ex-wife wanted to move here. She got a job at a ski resort. I went with her because—" He stopped. It seemed like the thing to do. "And after the divorce?" "Chloe's here. So I'm here." Victoria nodded slowly. "The girl I saw this morning?" "Yeah." "She's yours?" "Mine and Rachel's." "How old?" "7. Victoria's expression softened slightly. "What's she like?" Mason smiled without meaning to. "Stubborn, smart, thinks she's hilarious." "Is she?" "Sometimes." Silence settled again, less awkward this time. "What about you?" Mason asked. "What brings a New York real estate developer to the middle of nowhere?" Victoria's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I needed distance." "From what?" "Everything." She didn't elaborate, and Mason didn't push. They went back to working, or pretending to work. After another 10 minutes, Victoria closed her laptop. "I should go." "You just got here." "I know, but I'm not actually getting anything done." She paused. "It's distracting." "What is?" She looked at him. "You." Mason felt something drop in his chest. Victoria stood up, gathering her things. "I'll see you around, I guess." "Yeah." She left. Mason sat there, staring at his screen, not seeing it. That night, after Chloe was asleep, Mason poured himself a bourbon and sat on the back porch despite the cold. He hadn't thought about college in years, hadn't let himself, but now it was all coming back in fragments. Late nights in the architecture library. Victoria across the table, highlighter in hand, explaining why his approach to a design problem was structurally sound but aesthetically boring. The way she'd smile when he argued back, the way she'd lean in close when she was making a point, close enough that he could smell her shampoo. The night of their senior year, when they'd both stayed late working on final projects, and everyone else had gone home, and Mason had almost told her, but then she'd gotten a phone call. Her mother, saying something that made Victoria's face go tight. She'd packed up her stuff and left without a word. 3 days later, she was engaged to some guy named Damien from Columbia Business School. Mason had learned about it from a mutual friend who showed him the announcement in the Times. He'd smiled and said congratulations and felt something close inside his chest that he'd never quite managed to open again. A month after graduation, Victoria married Damien in a ceremony Mason didn't attend because he wasn't invited and wouldn't have gone anyway. He'd dated other people. Married Rachel 2 years later because she was kind and pretty and didn't make him feel anything complicated. That should have been his first warning sign. Now Victoria was across the street, and Mason had no idea what the hell to do with that information. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Can you take Chloe this weekend? Mark surprised me with a trip to Telluride." Mason typed back, "Sure." He finished his bourbon and went inside. 3 days passed without seeing Victoria. Mason told himself he wasn't looking for her. He was just aware, peripherally, that the lights in her house came on late and went off even later, that her G-Wagon left every morning around 9 and came back around 6, that she lived alone. On Thursday, he was carrying groceries from his truck when he saw her standing in her driveway, staring at something on the ground. A pipe had burst. Water was pouring out of her foundation, freezing as it spread across the asphalt. "Damn it," she said. Mason set down the groceries. "You need to shut off your main line." Victoria looked up, startled. "What?" "Water main. Do you know where it is?" "I have no idea." "It's probably in the basement." Mason was already crossing the street. "Come on." He followed her inside. The house was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Lots of reclaimed wood, designer furniture, carefully curated emptiness. It looked like a magazine spread. It looked like no one actually lived there. They found the basement stairs. Mason grabbed a wrench from his truck first. The basement was unfinished, all concrete and exposed beams. The water main was exactly where he expected it to be. "Hold this," he said, handing Victoria his phone's flashlight. She held it while he worked, just like she used to hold the level while he measured cuts in their woodworking class junior year. The valve was frozen. Mason put his weight into it. "You don't have to do this," Victoria said. "I'm already doing it." "I can call someone." "You could, but I'm here." The valve finally gave. The water stopped. Mason stood up, brushing rust off his hands. You'll need a plumber tomorrow to fix the pipe properly. Thank you. They went back upstairs. Mason's hands were filthy. Victoria pointed him toward a bathroom. When he came back out, she was in the kitchen, pouring coffee. I know you don't drink it this late, she said, but I'm offering anyway. Mason surprised himself. Sure. They sat at her kitchen island. The coffee was strong and black. How'd you know that? Mason asked. What? That I don't usually drink coffee at night. Victoria looked uncomfortable. You used to say it kept you awake. You remember that? I remember a lot of things. Silence. Why'd you really come here? Mason asked. Victoria stared into her cup. I got divorced. I know. She looked up sharply. How? Google? A small, bitter smile. Right. The perks of being moderately famous. She took a sip. It was in the tabloids for weeks. They made me out to be this cold corporate shark who chose her company over her marriage. What actually happened? I chose myself over a marriage that was killing me. She set down the cup. Damien wanted a wife who looked good at fundraisers and didn't ask questions. I wanted a partner. Turns out those are incompatible goals. I'm sorry. Don't be. Best decision I ever made. She paused. Second best, actually. What was the first? Victoria looked at him for a long moment. I haven't made it yet. The air between them felt suddenly charged. Mason stood up. I should go. Right. He headed for the door, stopped. Victoria? Yeah? If you need anything, pipe bursts, furnace problems, whatever, I'm across the street. I know. He left before he could say anything else stupid. 6. Friday morning, Mason was drinking coffee at Grateful Bread when Victoria walked in. This time it didn't feel like a coincidence. She sat down without asking. What are you working on? Mason turned his laptop so she could see. Somebody wants to turn a barn into a house. Victoria studied the plans. The original framing won't support a second floor. I know. They're going to fight you on it. They always do. She smiled slightly. Some things never change. They fell into an easy conversation about structural integrity and client stubbornness. It felt like college. It felt dangerous. An hour passed. I need to ask you something, Victoria said suddenly. Okay. Why didn't you ever call? Mason's brain stuttered. What? After graduation. We studied together for 4 years. We were friends. Good friends. And then nothing. Mason set down his coffee carefully. You got engaged. So? So you were getting married, Victoria. What was I supposed to do? Call you up and chat about the weather? We could have stayed in touch. Could we have? The question hung there. Victoria looked away. Maybe not. Why'd you marry him? Mason asked quietly. Damien? Yeah. Victoria was quiet for a long time. My mother was sick. Pancreatic cancer. She had maybe 6 months. She wanted to see me settled, safe. Damien was from the right family, had the right career, checked all the boxes. She exhaled slowly. I told myself I'd learn to love him. Did you? No. Mason didn't know what to say to that. She died 2 months after the wedding, Victoria continued, and I was stuck in a marriage that felt like a prison sentence from day one. She looked at Mason. You want to know the worst part? What? I used to lie awake at night and wonder what would have happened if I'd been braver, if I'd told you. She stopped. Mason's heart was pounding. Told me what? Victoria stood up abruptly. I need to go. Victoria, I shouldn't have said that. Forget it. She left before he could stop her. Mason sat there, pulse racing, wondering what the hell had just happened. Saturday was Chloe's soccer game. Mason stood on the sideline with the other parents, watching 7-year-olds chase a ball with absolutely no sense of strategy or coordination. Chloe was playing defense, which mostly meant standing still and waiting for the ball to come to her. She's got great instincts, someone said beside him. Mason turned. Victoria. She was wearing jeans and a puffer jacket, hands in her pockets, watching the field. What are you doing here? Mason asked. I was driving past. Saw the game. She glanced at him. Is that weird? That's weird. I'll go. No, stay. She stayed. They watched in silence for a few minutes. "Which one is Chloe?" Victoria asked. "Number 7, red shorts." Chloe chose that moment to trip over her own feet and fall face first into the grass. Mason winced. She's still figuring out the whole coordination thing. Chloe got up, completely unbothered, and went back to standing still. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. "What?" Mason said. "Nothing. She looks like you." Poor kid. "I didn't mean it like that." The game ended in a 2-2 tie that everyone pretended to care about. Chloe came running over, grass-stained and triumphant, despite doing absolutely nothing. "Did you see me almost get the ball?" she asked breathlessly. "I saw you fall down," Mason said. "That was strategy." "Was it?" "Yeah, it confused them." Victoria was trying not to smile. Chloe noticed her for the first time. "Who are you?" "I'm Victoria. I live across the street." "Oh, cool." Chloe looked at Mason. "Can we get burgers?" "Sure." "Can Victoria come?" Mason's brain short-circuited. "I don't think—" "I'd love to," Victoria said. "Yes." They ended up at a diner called the White House Tavern. Chloe ordered a burger with extra pickles and chocolate milk. Mason got coffee. Victoria ordered a salad she barely touched. Chloe talked nonstop about school, soccer, her friend Emma, who was still basically the worst, and a boy named Trevor who ate glue. Victoria listened like it was the most interesting conversation she'd ever had. "Do you have kids?" Chloe asked. "No," Victoria said. "Why not?" "Chloe," Mason warned. "What?" "I'm just asking," Victoria smiled. "It's okay. I was married, but it didn't work out." "My parents are divorced too," Chloe said matter-of-factly. "It's not that bad. I have 2 houses now." "That's a good way to look at it." "And my mom's new husband is kind of boring, but he has a really big TV." Mason buried his face in his hands. Victoria was actively fighting laughter. After burgers, Chloe convinced them to get ice cream despite the fact that it was 20 degrees outside. They walked down Main Street, Chloe skipping ahead with her cone, Mason and Victoria trailing behind. "She's great," Victoria said quietly. "She's a handful. The best ones are." They walked in comfortable silence. "I'm sorry about yesterday," Victoria said. "At the coffee shop. I said too much." "You didn't." "I did." Mason stopped walking. "What were you going to say?" "Mason, what were you going to tell me that night? What would have happened if you'd been braver?" Victoria looked at him, something raw in her expression. "I was going to tell you that I'd been in love with you since sophomore year, that every time you smiled at me, I forgot how to breathe, that I used to invent reasons to study with you just so I could sit across from you for a few more hours." Mason felt the world tilt. "But then my mom called," Victoria continued, voice tight, "and she told me she was dying, and she asked me to marry Damien because he was safe and successful, and she wouldn't have to worry about me. And I was so scared and so tired that I said yes." She exhaled shakily. "I've regretted it every day since." "Victoria, don't." She stepped back. "Don't say anything nice. I don't deserve it. I made my choice." "You were 22 and your mother was dying." "That's not an excuse." "It's a reason." Chloe came running back, ice cream dripping down her hand. "Dad, can we go to the park?" Mason looked at Victoria. She was looking away, jaw tight. "Yeah," he said. "We can go to the park. Patrol." They ended up at Wagner Park, which was mostly empty except for a few hardy souls walking dogs. Chloe ran straight for the swings. Mason and Victoria sat on a bench, watching her. "I shouldn't have come to lunch," Victoria said. "Why not?" "Because this—" She gestured between them. "This is complicated." "It doesn't have to be, doesn't it?" She turned to face him. "Mason, I'm not staying in Aspen. This is temporary. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year. I have a company in New York. I have responsibilities." "I know." "And you have a life here, a daughter, stability." "I know that too." "So what are we doing?" Mason was quiet for a moment. "I don't know, but I know I haven't felt this awake in years." Victoria's expression cracked slightly. "That's not fair." "What isn't?" "You, saying things like that." "I'm just being honest." "Well, stop it." But she was smiling, just a little. Chloe fell off the swing. Mason jumped up, but she was already climbing back on, laughing. She's fearless, Victoria said. She gets that from her mother. What does she get from you? Mason thought about it. The anxiety, probably. Victoria laughed. Actually, laughed. The sound did something to Mason's chest. They sat there until the sun started setting and Chloe finally ran out of energy. On the drive home, Chloe fell asleep in the back seat. Victoria followed in her G-Wagon. When they pulled into Mason's driveway, he carefully extracted Chloe from her car seat. She didn't wake up. Victoria stood next to her car, keys in hand. "Thank you for today," Mason said quietly. "I didn't do anything. You showed up." Something shifted in her expression. "Yeah, I did." She turned to leave. "Victoria," she stopped. "I'm not asking you to stay forever," Mason said. "I'm not asking you for anything. But if you want to get coffee tomorrow, I'll be at Grateful Bread at 9. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. Okay. I'll be there. She got in her car and drove across the street. Mason carried Chloe inside and put her to bed. Then he stood in his kitchen, heart pounding, wondering what the hell he'd just done. Outside, the lights in Victoria's house were on, and for the first time in 18 months, Mason felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. That night, in her empty mansion across the street, Victoria poured herself a glass of wine she didn't drink and sat in the dark, staring at nothing. She'd come to Aspen to escape, to put distance between herself and the wreckage of her marriage, the pressure of her company, the suffocating expectations of a life she'd never actually chosen. Instead, she'd found Mason Reed. Mason, who'd gotten more handsome in the years since college, who had a daughter and a life and a quiet sadness in his eyes that matched her own, who'd fixed her burst pipe without being asked and made her laugh without trying. Mason, who she'd loved 10 years ago and apparently never stopped loving. She set down the wine. This was a mistake. All of it. She should keep her distance, finish out her self-imposed exile, and go back to New York where she belonged. But then she thought about the way he'd looked at her in the park. The way his voice had sounded when he said, "I haven't felt this awake in years." She thought about Chloe, fearless and funny and completely herself. She thought about lunch at the diner and how normal it had felt. How easy. Victoria stood up and walked to the window. Across the street, Mason's lights were still on. She picked up her phone, put it down, picked it up again. Finally, she typed, "Thank you for today." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Thank you for coming." Victoria stared at the screen. Then she typed, "See you tomorrow." His response came quickly. 9 o'clock. Victoria set down her phone and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Outside, snow started falling again, covering everything in silence. And across the street, Mason turned off his lights and went to bed, knowing that tomorrow would change everything. Neither of them slept well. 9 o'clock came and went. Mason sat at his usual table in Grateful Bread, laptop open, staring at the same sentence in an email he'd been trying to write for 20 minutes. The cursor blinked. He typed 3 words, deleted them, typed them again. 9:15. She wasn't coming. He told himself it was fine. Expected even. Victoria had probably woken up, remembered she was a billionaire with actual problems, and realized that getting coffee with her college almost something was a waste of time. 9:20. Mason closed his laptop. The door opened. Victoria walked in, hair still wet, no makeup, wearing yesterday's jeans and a Columbia sweatshirt he recognized from a decade ago. She saw him and stopped. "I'm late." "Little bit. I couldn't find my keys, then I found them in the refrigerator." She walked over, set down her bag. "I don't know why they were in the refrigerator." "Happens to the best of us." "Does it?" "No, that's weird." She smiled, and something in Mason's chest unclenched. Victoria went to get coffee. When she came back, she didn't open her laptop, just sat there, holding her cup, looking tired. "Rough night?" Mason asked. "Didn't sleep much." "Yeah, me neither." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Victoria spoke. "I've been thinking about what I said yesterday. At the park." Mason waited. "I meant it," she continued. "All of it. But I don't know what to do with it." "You don't have to do anything with it." "Don't I?" "We can just Mason gestured vaguely. See what happens. Victoria laughed, but it sounded sad. That's not how my life works. I plan things. I strategize. I make 5-year projections. How's that been working out? She winced. Fair point. Look, Mason said, leaning forward. I'm not suggesting we run away and get married. I'm just saying maybe we don't have to figure everything out right now. Maybe we can just have coffee, talk, exist in the same space without it being a crisis. Victoria considered this. I'm not good at that. At what? Not planning, not controlling outcomes. I know. You always knew that about me. Yeah. She looked at him, something vulnerable in her expression. What else do you know? Mason thought about it. You tap your pen when you're thinking. You drink your coffee black because you think adding anything is cheating. You hate being wrong more than anything, but you're always the first person to admit when you are. That's still true. I figured. What else? You're terrified of asking for help. You'd rather break your back doing something alone than risk looking weak. Victoria's jaw tightened. Also still true. And you're here, Mason said quietly, sitting in a coffee shop in a town you don't belong in, talking to someone you haven't seen in 10 years, because some part of you is just as tired of being strong as I am. Victoria didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, I forgot how you do that. Do what? See through me. I'm not trying to... I know. That's what makes it worse. She set down her coffee. In New York, I'm Victoria Hale, CEO, board member. The woman who turned her father's mid-tier development company into a billion-dollar empire. I walk into rooms and people stop talking. They defer. They're careful. And here? Here, I'm just someone whose keys ended up in the refrigerator. She smiled slightly. It's disorienting. Good disorienting or bad disorienting? Victoria was quiet. I don't know yet. They sat there drinking coffee, not working, just existing together like Mason had suggested. After a while, Victoria said, Tell me about your daughter. What do you want to know? Everything. What's she like? Really like, not the proud dad version. Mason smiled. She's stubborn as hell. Smart in ways that are kind of alarming for a 7-year-old. She asks questions I don't have answers to. Like what? Last week she asked me why people get divorced if they loved each other in the first place. Victoria's expression shifted. What'd you say? I said sometimes people change. Sometimes the love changes. Sometimes it was never the right kind of love to begin with. He paused. Then she asked if I still loved her mom. Do you? No. I care about her. I want her to be happy. But love? Mason shook his head. I don't think I ever loved Rachel the way you're supposed to love someone you marry. Why'd you marry her then? Mason had asked himself that question 1,000 times. She was safe. Uncomplicated. I just spent 4 years being in love with someone I couldn't have, and Rachel didn't make me feel anything dangerous. That's a terrible reason to marry someone. I know. Did she know? That you didn't really love her? I think so. Eventually. Mason stared into his coffee. I think that's why she left. Not because of anything I did wrong, just because she finally admitted she deserved someone who looked at her the way... He stopped. The way what? Victoria asked. The way I used to look at you. The air between them went very still. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, silenced it. Work? Mason asked. My assistant. Apparently there's a crisis that requires my immediate attention. Is there actually a crisis? There's always a crisis. Victoria rubbed her eyes. I stepped down as CEO 2 months ago. Put my VP in charge. Told everyone I needed time to reset, but they still call me for everything. Why'd you step down? Because I was turning into someone I didn't recognize. I was working 18-hour days, sleeping 4 hours a night, making decisions that affected thousands of people. And I couldn't remember the last time I felt anything except exhausted. She looked at him. The day I signed my divorce papers, I went back to my office and had a panic attack in the bathroom. Full on couldn't breathe, thought I was dying. My assistant found me on the floor. Jesus, Victoria. I'm fine now. Mostly. She picked up her phone, looked at the screen, set it back down. I came here because I needed to remember what it felt like to be a person instead of a corporation. And? And now I'm sitting in a coffee shop with you, and it feels like being 22 again, except this time I actually know what I'm doing. Do you? Victoria smiled. No, not even a little bit. Her phone buzzed again, then again. You should probably get that, Mason said. I should probably get a lot of things. But she didn't reach for the phone. They stayed until the lunch rush started and the table next to them filled with tourists arguing about ski conditions. Victoria finally packed up her laptop. I have to deal with work, she said. But can we do this again? Tomorrow? Tomorrow. Mason watched her leave, then sat there for another 10 minutes, trying to figure out what the hell he was doing. The truth was, he had no idea. All he knew was that Victoria Hale had walked back into his life, and suddenly everything felt different, sharper, more real. He drove home and spent the afternoon pretending to work while actually staring out the window at her house. This was stupid. He knew it was stupid. Victoria was here temporarily. She had a whole life in New York. He had Chloe in joint custody and a carefully constructed routine that depended on nothing changing. Getting involved with her was asking for disaster. He was going to do it anyway. That evening, Mason picked up Chloe from Rachel's. His ex-wife stood in the doorway of her new house, looking annoyingly happy. She had a great time, Rachel said. Mark took her ice skating. That's nice. How was your weekend? Fine. Rachel studied him. You look different. I don't look different. You do. You look, I don't know, awake. Mason shifted uncomfortably. I'm the same as always. Okay. She didn't sound convinced. Chloe mentioned you had lunch with someone named Victoria? A friend from college. She moved in across the street. Just a friend? Rachel. I'm not interrogating you. I'm just... She paused. I'm glad. That's all. You've been alone for a long time. I have Chloe. That's not what I mean. Mason knew what she meant. Chloe came running out, backpack dragging behind her. Dad, Mark has a hot tub. That's great, sweetie. Can we get a hot tub? No. Why not? Because we live in a normal house. Chloe processed this. I don't think that's a good reason. Mason said goodbye to Rachel and drove home with Chloe chattering about ice skating and hot tubs and how Mark was okay but kind of boring. When they pulled into the driveway, Victoria's G-Wagon was parked across the street. Is Victoria home? Chloe asked. Looks like it. Can I go say hi? Maybe later. You have homework. I don't have homework. You always have homework. Not on weekends. Mason had forgotten it was Sunday. Then you have other things. Chloe gave him a look that said she knew he was making stuff up, but she went inside without arguing. Mason made dinner. Chloe did actually have homework, a worksheet about the water cycle that she completed in approximately 4 minutes while asking questions about why clouds didn't fall down. Gravity, Mason said. But clouds have water in them. Water falls down. Not until it gets heavy enough. How does it know when it's heavy enough? Science. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Chloe accepted this and moved on to complaining about Trevor, who still ate glue. After dinner, after homework, after the bedtime routine that somehow always took twice as long as it should, Mason stood at his kitchen window, looking across the street. Victoria's lights were on. He could see her moving around inside, talking on the phone, gesturing in that sharp way she did when she was frustrated. His phone buzzed. Victoria. I'm having a crisis. Mason. Work crisis or actual crisis? Victoria. Furnace died. House is freezing. Repair company can't come until tomorrow. Mason grabbed his coat. He was halfway across the street when Victoria opened her front door. I wasn't asking you to... She started. I know. I can handle it myself. I know that too. She stepped aside and let him in. The house was cold. Not emergency cold, but definitely uncomfortable. Where's the furnace? Mason asked. Basement. They went down together. Mason had brought his toolbox this time. The furnace was high-end and complicated, but the problem was simple. The pilot light was out. Do you have a lighter? He asked. Victoria produced one from her pocket. Mason relit the pilot. The furnace kicked on with a satisfying whoosh. That's it? Victoria said. That's it. I'm paying someone $200 tomorrow to do that? Probably more than $200. Victoria laughed. but it was the frustrated kind. I used to be competent. You are competent. I run a company worth $1 billion, and I can't light my own furnace. Different skill sets. That's a polite way of saying I'm useless at normal life. Mason stood up, brushing dust off his jeans. You're not useless. You're just used to having people handle things for you. That's the same thing. It's not. They went back upstairs. Victoria poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if Mason wanted any. He took one anyway. Thank you, she said, again. You're going to owe me a lot of furnace repairs at this rate. I'll pay you. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? The question hung there, loaded with about 10 years of subtext. Mason took a sip of wine. I want you to stop acting like asking for help is a personal failure. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. That's harder than it sounds. I know. They stood in her kitchen, drinking wine, not talking. The furnace hummed in the background. Outside, snow started falling again. Can I ask you something? Victoria said finally. Sure. Why are you being so nice to me? Mason frowned. What kind of question is that? A genuine one. I show up in your town unannounced, dragging 10 years of baggage. I monopolize your mornings at the coffee shop. I crash your lunch with your daughter. I call you over to fix my house. She set down her wine. And you just show up every time. Why? Mason put down his own glass. You really don't know? Would I be asking if I did? Victoria, I spent 4 years in college working up the courage to tell you how I felt. Then you got engaged, and I convinced myself I dodged a bullet, that it was just a crush, that it would fade. He took a breath. It never did. I married someone else, had a kid, built a whole life, and it never went away. So yeah, I'm showing up. Because you're here, and for the first time in 10 years, I have a chance to not be a coward about it. Victoria went very still. I'm not asking you for anything, Mason continued. I'm not expecting anything, but I'm not going to pretend I don't care either. Mason, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Victoria crossed the distance between them in 3 steps. Kissed him. Mason's brain blanked out completely. Then instinct kicked in, and he was kissing her back, one hand sliding into her hair, the other pulling her closer. She tasted like wine and something else he couldn't name. Her hands gripped his shirt. It was desperate and messy, and nothing like the careful first kiss he'd imagined 1,000 times in college. It was better. They broke apart, breathing hard. That was... Victoria started. Yeah. I shouldn't have... Probably not. I'm not... She stepped back, running a hand through her hair. I'm not good at this. Relationships, feelings, any of it. Join the club. I'm serious. I'm a disaster. I work too much. I'm controlling. I have trust issues and abandonment issues and probably a dozen other issues I haven't identified yet. Victoria. And I'm leaving. Eventually. I have a company, responsibilities. I know. So this is... We can't... Mason cupped her face in his hands. Stop planning. Just for 5 minutes. Stop trying to figure out how this ends and just be here. Victoria closed her eyes. I don't know how. Then let me teach you. He kissed her again, slower this time. She made a small sound against his mouth, and Mason felt something crack open in his chest that he'd kept locked for years. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was looking at him like he'd just solved an equation she'd been working on forever. I should go, Mason said. Why? Because if I don't leave now, I'm not going to leave at all. Victoria's expression shifted into something that looked like panic and want at the same time. Stay. Victoria, just for a little while, we don't have to... I just don't want to be alone right now. So Mason stayed. They sat on her absurdly expensive couch, not touching, just talking. About college, about the years between, about the marriages that had failed for different reasons that somehow felt the same. I think I knew on my wedding day, Victoria said quietly. We were at the plaza, 500 people. My mother was crying. Damien looked perfect in his tux, and all I could think was that none of it felt real. Did you love him at all? I tried to. I really did. She pulled her knees up to her chest. But every time he touched me, I felt nothing. Every conversation felt like a transaction. He'd ask about my day, but he didn't actually want to know. He wanted the highlight reel, the success stories. What about the hard parts? He didn't want those. Said I was too negative when I talked about problems. She laughed bitterly. Turns out emotional support isn't a luxury you can buy. Mason reached over and took her hand. She laced her fingers through his. What about you? Victoria asked. When did you know it wasn't working with Rachel? Honestly, about 6 months in. Mason stared at their joined hands. We were having dinner and she was telling me about her day, and I realized I was just waiting for her to stop talking. Not because she was boring, but because I felt nothing, no curiosity, no connection, just nothing. But you stayed. She got pregnant, so yeah, I stayed, and I tried. I really tried to make it work. He paused. But Chloe grew up in a house where her parents were polite strangers. I think that's worse than divorce. Is Rachel happy now? Seems like it. Mark's a good guy. Boring, according to Chloe, but good. Victoria smiled. Your daughter has strong opinions. About everything. I like her. She likes you, too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Mason's phone buzzed, a reminder he'd set to take out the trash, the mundane intrusion of real life. I should actually go, he said. Chloe's probably still awake, reading under her covers with a flashlight. Does she do that? Every night. You let her? I pretend I don't know about it. Victoria laughed. That's good parenting. That's exhausted parenting. Mason stood up. Victoria walked him to the door. Tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow. He started to leave, then turned back. Victoria? Yeah? This thing we're doing, whatever it is, I'm okay with not knowing where it's going, but I need you to be okay with it too. I can't be the only one who's all in. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. I'm terrified. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of how easy it feels when nothing in my life has ever felt easy. That's not an answer. I know. She took a breath. But I'm here. Tomorrow at 9. That's the best I can do right now. Mason nodded. Then I'll see you at 9. He crossed the street, let himself into his quiet house, and found Chloe exactly where he'd predicted, under the covers with a flashlight, reading a book about dragons. Busted, he said from the doorway. Chloe looked up, completely unrepentant. I was just checking to make sure it wasn't scary. And? It's not scary. Good. Now sleep. Was that Victoria's house you were at? Mason hesitated. Yeah. Are you guys dating? What? Emma's parents are dating other people now, after their divorce. Emma says it's weird, but also kind of okay. We're not... It's complicated. Chloe considered this. Do you like her? Yeah, I do. Does she like you? I think so. Then it's not that complicated. Chloe said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. Maybe it was. Mason kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. You're not going to take my book? Would it do any good? No. Then no. He closed her door and went to his own room, where he lay awake for hours, thinking about Victoria across the street, probably doing the same thing. The next morning came too fast and not fast enough. Mason dropped Chloe at school and drove straight to Grateful Bread. Victoria was already there, looking like she hadn't slept either. Hi, she said. Hi. They got coffee. They sat down. They opened their laptops and didn't work. Around 10, Victoria said, I have a confession. Okay. I haven't been entirely honest about why I'm here. Mason's stomach dropped. What do you mean? I told you I came to Aspen for distance, to reset. That's true, but it's not the whole truth. She closed her laptop. 3 months ago, I was going through my divorce papers. Damien's lawyer sent over some financial documents. In the pile was an old folder from when we first got married. Estate planning, wills, that kind of thing. Okay. There was a letter in it, from my mother. She'd written it a week before she died, asked the lawyer to include it in my files. Victoria's voice went quiet. She said she was sorry for pushing me toward Damien, for making me feel like I had to choose safety over happiness. And she said... Victoria stopped. What? Mason asked. She said she'd met you. Once. At graduation. I'd introduced you as my friend, but she saw right through it. She knew how I felt about you. Victoria looked up, eyes bright. And she said if she could do it over, she would have told me to be brave, to choose the person who made me feel alive instead of the person who made me feel safe. Mason didn't know what to say. I've been carrying that letter for 3 months, Victoria continued. After I finalized the divorce, I put it on my desk. Read it every day. And I realized I had no idea how to be brave. I'd spent my whole life making strategic decisions, hedging bets, minimizing risk. She reached across the table and took his hand. Then I remembered you were in Aspen. I'd seen something about it in a mutual friend's Facebook post years ago, and I thought, maybe that's what brave looks like. Showing up in the one place where I can't hide behind my company, or my money, or my carefully constructed walls. You came here for me. I came here for myself, but yeah, you were part of it. Mason's head was spinning. Why didn't you just call? And say what? Hi, we haven't spoken in 10 years, but I'm divorced now and I've been thinking about you constantly since my mother died. Want to get coffee? That would have worked. Victoria laughed, and it sounded wet. I'm not that brave. Mason moved around the table and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his shoulder. This is insane, she mumbled into his shirt. Yeah. We barely know each other anymore. I know. I'm going to screw this up. Probably. She pulled back, hitting him lightly. You're supposed to say, I won't. I'm not going to lie to you. Mason cupped her face. We're both going to screw this up multiple times, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we just figure it out as we go. Victoria closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. I'm so tired of being afraid. Then stop. It's not that simple. Isn't it? She opened her eyes. Kiss me again. So he did, right there in the coffee shop, in front of the baristas and the tourists and the whole damn town. And for the first time in 10 years, Mason felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The thing about falling into something real, Mason discovered, was that it didn't announce itself with fireworks or dramatic music. It just happened quietly, in the spaces between coffee and conversation, in the way Victoria started showing up at his house on Tuesday mornings with pastries she pretended she hadn't gone out of her way to buy. They were just sitting there, she'd say, setting a bag from the expensive bakery downtown on his kitchen counter. Seemed wasteful to leave them. The bakery is 20 minutes from here, Mason would point out. I was in the area. At 7 in the morning? I'm an early riser. Chloe loved it. She'd come downstairs in her pajamas, eyes still half closed, and Victoria would already be there, arguing with Mason about whether his coffee maker was sufficient or an insult to the bean. It makes coffee, Mason said one Tuesday in late January. That's literally its only job. It makes brown water that vaguely resembles coffee, Victoria corrected, examining the ancient drip machine like it had personally offended her. Snob. Realist. Chloe wandered in, climbed onto a stool, and grabbed a chocolate croissant without a word. Morning, sunshine, Victoria said. Chloe grunted. She's not a morning person, Mason explained. I can see that. Are you dating my dad? Chloe asked suddenly, mouth full of pastry. Mason choked on his coffee. Victoria went very still. Chloe, Mason started. What? I'm just asking. She took another bite. Emma says when grown-ups hang out every day and smile at each other a lot, they're dating. Victoria looked at Mason. Mason looked at Victoria. We're figuring things out, Victoria said carefully. What does that mean? It means we're spending time together and seeing what happens. Chloe processed this. So, yes. It's complicated, Mason said. You keep saying that, but it seems pretty simple. Chloe finished her croissant and slid off the stool. I'm going to get dressed. Can Victoria take me to school? I'm taking you to school, Mason said, but can Victoria come? Mason looked at Victoria. She shrugged, trying not to smile. Sure, Mason said. Victoria can come. So that's how Victoria ended up in Mason's truck at 7:45 on a Tuesday morning, sandwiched between him and a 7-year-old who spent the entire drive explaining why her teacher was wrong about the water cycle. She says rain comes from clouds, but she didn't explain where clouds come from, Chloe said. That's like saying pizza comes from boxes. Where do you think clouds come from? Victoria asked. Evaporation? Duh. But Mrs. Patterson skipped that part. Did you tell her? Yeah, she said we'd get to it later, but that's not how teaching works. You can't explain step 3 without explaining step 1. Victoria caught Mason's eye over Chloe's head. He was trying not to laugh. You should be a teacher, Victoria said. Sounds like you've got it figured out. I'm going to be an engineer, Chloe said matter-of-factly. Like my dad, except I'm going to build roller coasters. That's a good plan. I know. They pulled up to the school. Chloe grabbed her backpack, then paused. Are you going to be here when I get home? She asked Victoria. Victoria glanced at Mason. I don't know. Maybe? Okay, bye. She was out of the truck and gone before either of them could respond. Mason sat there, hands on the wheel, engine still running. That was, Victoria started, terrifying? I was going to say nice. Mason turned to look at her. She likes you. I like her too. She doesn't usually like people this fast. Maybe I'm special, Victoria said, but her voice was quiet, uncertain. You are, Mason said, but that's not what scares you. Victoria looked out the window at the stream of kids heading into school. She's 7 years old and she's already been through a divorce. She doesn't need me showing up and then disappearing when I go back to New York. Is that what you're planning to do? Disappear? I don't know what I'm planning. She turned back to him. That's the problem. I've spent my entire adult life planning everything. Quarterly projections, 5-year strategies, exit plans for deals that haven't even closed yet. And now I'm here with you and your daughter and I have no idea what I'm doing. Welcome to parenthood. I'm not her parent. I know, but you're here. And she's getting attached. And I need to know... Mason stopped, trying to find the right words. I need to know you're not just killing time until you figure out your real life. Victoria's expression cracked. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what to think. You won't talk about the future. You change the subject every time I bring up anything past next week. Because I don't have answers. Then find some. Because I'm all in, Victoria. I have been since you showed up, but I can't do this alone. Victoria sat there, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I'm scared I'm going to ruin this. You're not... I am. I ruin things. I did it with Damien. I almost did it with my company. I push people away when they get too close because it's easier than admitting I need them. She looked at him, eyes bright. And you and Chloe, you're the best thing that's happened to me in 10 years, and I'm terrified I'm going to wake up one day and realize I've destroyed it. Mason reached over and took her hand. You're not going to destroy anything. You don't know that. I know you, the real you, not the CEO version or the billionaire version. The version who puts her keys in the refrigerator and argues about coffee makers and shows up at 7 in the morning with pastries because you wanted an excuse to see me. That's manipulation. That's caring. Victoria laughed, but it sounded wet. I hate that you see through me. No, you don't. No, I don't. Mason pulled her across the console and kissed her. She tasted like coffee and chocolate and something that was just Victoria. When they broke apart, she was smiling. I should get to work, she said. You're already late. I know. But she didn't move. They sat there in the school parking lot, holding hands like teenagers, until a crossing guard knocked on the window and told them they were blocking the bus lane. The weeks that followed had a rhythm to them that felt both new and ancient. Victoria showed up most mornings. Sometimes she stayed for breakfast. Sometimes she just grabbed coffee and left. But she always came back. Mason found himself planning his days around her schedule. When he had Chloe, Victoria fit herself into their routine like she'd always been there. When Chloe was with Rachel, Mason and Victoria had the kind of long, meandering conversations that only happen when there's no one else around. They talked about everything: college memories, failed marriages, the weird space between who they'd been and who they were becoming. One night in early February, they were sitting on Mason's back porch, bundled in coats and blankets, watching snow fall in the darkness. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Always. Do you ever regret it? Not telling me how you felt back then? Mason thought about it. Every day for about 5 years. Then I had Chloe, and the regret got smaller. Not because I stopped caring, but because I couldn't imagine my life without her. And if I'd told you, if we'd gotten together, Chloe wouldn't exist, Victoria finished. Yeah. That's a hell of a trade-off. It is. Mason pulled the blanket tighter around them. But I think about the version of us that could have been. 22 years old, stupid in love, trying to figure out life together. We would have crashed and burned. You think so? I know so. You were about to take over your dad's company. I was taking a job in Chicago. Neither of us knew who we were yet. And now? Now I know exactly who I am, and I know exactly what I want. Victoria turned to look at him. Which is? You, this, whatever we're building. Even though I'm leaving eventually? Even though. Victoria was quiet for a long time. I got an email yesterday from my board. They want me to come back. Not as CEO, just to consult on a project in Brooklyn. 3 weeks, maybe a month. Mason felt his stomach drop, but he kept his voice steady. When? March. Are you going? I don't know. She pulled her knees up. Part of me wants to. I miss the work, miss feeling competent. But another part, what? Another part doesn't want to leave you. Mason's heart was pounding. So don't. It's not that simple. Why not? Because that company is everything I built. It's my legacy. I can't just walk away. I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to choose. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Mason turned to face her fully. Walking away is giving up. Choosing is deciding what matters most. Victoria's expression shuddered. You're asking me to choose between you and my career. I'm asking you to figure out what you actually want. Because right now it feels like you're hedging your bets, keeping 1 foot here and 1 foot in New York so you don't have to commit to either. That's not fair, isn't it? Victoria stood up abruptly. I should go. Don't do that. Don't run every time this gets hard. I'm not running. I just need space. Space from what? From you. From this. From feeling like I'm constantly disappointing you by not having my entire life figured out. Mason stood too. I don't expect you to have everything figured out. I just need to know I'm not wasting my time. The words came out harsher than he meant them. Victoria flinched like he'd slapped her. Is that what you think? She said quietly. That you're wasting your time? I don't know what to think anymore. Every time I try to talk about the future, you shut down. Every time I ask what you want, you give me non-answers. I'm here, Victoria, completely here. But I can't keep doing this if you're not. I am here. Are you? Because it feels like part of you is still in New York, waiting for an excuse to go back. Victoria's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should go back. This was a mistake. Victoria, no, you're right. I'm not built for this, for domesticity and routines and small-town life. I tried to be someone I'm not, and it's not fair to you or Chloe. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. Mason followed. Don't leave like this, he said. Why not? We both knew this was temporary. I didn't. Victoria stopped at the door, hand on the knob. Then you're a fool. She left. Mason stood in his empty house, listening to her car start across the street, wondering how the hell they'd gotten here. The next morning, Victoria didn't show up at Grateful Bread, or the morning after that. Mason told himself he wasn't going to be the one to reach out first. She was the one who'd run. She could be the one to fix it. But by Thursday, he cracked. He texted, "Can we talk?" No response. Friday. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it the way it came out." Nothing. Saturday, Chloe asked where Victoria was. "She's busy," Mason said. "With what?" "Work stuff." Chloe gave him a look that said she knew he was lying. "Did you guys have a fight?" "Why would you think that?" "Because you look sad, and you keep checking your phone." Mason set down his phone. "We had a disagreement." "About what?" "Grown-up stuff." "Are you going to fix it?" "I don't know how." Chloe thought about this. "You should probably say sorry." "I did. She's not responding." "Then say it in person. That's what Mrs. Patterson makes us do when we fight at school. You can't just text sorry. You have to say it for real." Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Sunday morning, Mason crossed the street and knocked on Victoria's door. No answer. Her car was there. The lights were on. But she didn't come to the door. Mason knocked again. "Victoria, I know you're home. Please, just let me explain." Nothing. He stood there for 5 more minutes, feeling like an idiot, then went back home. That night, he saw her through her window, pacing with her phone pressed to her ear, gesturing angrily at whoever was on the other end. Monday morning, her G-Wagon was gone. Mason tried not to panic. She was probably just getting groceries or coffee or running literally any errand that didn't involve avoiding him. But the car didn't come back. Tuesday morning, it was still gone. Wednesday, Mason texted Rachel, "Can you take Chloe this week?" Rachel called immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I need to handle something." "Mason, what happened?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." "Is this about Victoria?" "How do you—" "Chloe told me. She likes her. Says she brings good pastries." Despite everything, Mason smiled. "She does." "So what happened?" Mason sank onto his couch. "I pushed too hard. Asked for answers she wasn't ready to give. And she ran." "Did you go after her?" "She won't talk to me." "Then make her." "How?" "You're a smart guy. Figure it out." She hung up. Mason sat there staring at nothing, trying to figure out how to fix something when he didn't fully understand what he'd broken. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Reed?" A woman's voice, professional, clipped. "Yes? This is Jennifer Park, Ms. Hale's executive assistant. She asked me to call you." Mason's heart stopped. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. She's in New York. She wanted me to let you know she'll be gone for a few weeks. Maybe longer." "She left?" "Yes, sir. She flew out Sunday night. 2 days ago." While Mason was standing on her porch, knocking like an idiot. "Did she say when she's coming back?" A pause. "She asked me to arrange for a property manager to check on the Aspen house. Long term." The bottom dropped out of Mason's stomach. "I see. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No, thank you." He hung up. Victoria was gone. Really gone. And she'd sent her assistant to tell him instead of doing it herself. Mason should have been angry, should have felt betrayed. Instead, he just felt tired. He spent the rest of the week going through the motions. Work, Chloe, sleep. Repeat. Chloe asked about Victoria twice. Mason gave vague answers. Eventually, she stopped asking. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Mason stopped checking Victoria's house for signs of life. Stopped looking at his phone every 5 minutes. Stopped hoping. Then, on a Friday night in late February, his phone rang. Victoria. Mason stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Hi," he said. "Hi." Her voice sounded different, tired, strained. "How's New York?" "Terrible, great, I don't know." A pause. "Can we talk?" "We are talking." "In person. I'm at the house." Mason's heart lurched. "You're here?" "I got in an hour ago. I know it's late and you're probably busy. I'll be right there." He didn't bother with a coat. Just crossed the street in his t-shirt and jeans, knocked once, and walked in when she opened the door. Victoria looked exhausted. Hair pulled back, no makeup, same Columbia sweatshirt she'd been wearing the first morning at the coffee shop. "You look like hell," Mason said. "Thanks." "You too." They stood there 3 feet apart, not touching. "Why'd you leave?" Mason asked finally. "Because you were right. I was hedging, keeping 1 foot out the door so I wouldn't have to risk everything." She wrapped her arms around herself. "And then I got to New York and threw myself into work, and it felt good, familiar, safe. And I was miserable. Every morning I'd wake up and reach for my phone to text you about something stupid Chloe probably said. Every night I'd think about how you were probably on your back porch, freezing your ass off, drinking bourbon." She looked at him. "I spent 2 weeks pretending I was fine. Then my assistant asked if I wanted her to cancel the Aspen house, and I couldn't do it. So you came back." "I came back." She took a shaky breath. "But I don't have answers yet. I don't know how to make this work. My company needs me. My board is pressuring me to come back full time. And I keep thinking about what you said, about choosing, and I don't know how." Mason crossed the space between them. "Then we figure it out together." "How?" "I don't know. But I know I'd rather fight with you than be comfortable without you." Victoria's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry." For running. For sending my assistant to call you like a coward. For... Mason kissed her, hard and desperate, and full of 3 weeks of missing her. She kissed him back, hands fisting in his shirt, making small broken sounds against his mouth. When they broke apart, she was crying. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Need someone. I've spent my whole life not needing anyone. Well, tough. You need me now. And I need you. And we're just going to have to deal with that. Victoria laughed through her tears. That's your solution? That's my solution. She buried her face in his chest. Mason held her, feeling her shake, feeling his own eyes burn. I missed you, she said into his shirt. I missed you too. Even though I'm a disaster? Especially because you're a disaster. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I need to tell you something. Okay. I turned down the consulting job. Mason went still. What? The Brooklyn project. I told them no. Victoria, I'm not staying in Aspen forever. I can't. But I'm also not ready to go back to New York full time, so I'm figuring out a middle ground, remote work, flying back for important meetings, delegating more. She looked at him. It's not perfect. It's going to be messy and complicated, and we're probably going to fight about it. Probably. But I'm choosing this. Us. Whatever we're building. She reached up and touched his face. I'm choosing you. Mason pulled her close and kissed her again, slower this time. She melted against him, and for the first time in 3 weeks, something in his chest unclenched. Stay tonight, he said against her mouth. Mason, not like that. Just stay. I don't want you across the street. I want you here. Victoria pulled back, studying his face. Chloe's with Rachel this week? Yeah. Then okay. I'll stay. They ended up on his couch, tangled together, talking until 3 a.m. about everything and nothing. About Victoria's company and Mason's work and Chloe's latest theory about why clouds don't fall. She asked me if you were coming back, Mason said quietly. What did you tell her? That I didn't know. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I don't want to hurt her. Then don't. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Show up. Be consistent. Don't make promises you can't keep. He tipped her chin up. She doesn't need perfect. She just needs real. What if real isn't enough? It's always enough. Victoria closed her eyes. I'm going to disappoint you both. Probably. We'll disappoint you too. That's how this works. That's a terrible sales pitch. I'm not selling anything. I'm just telling you the truth. Victoria laughed, soft and tired. I forgot how you do that. Do what? Make everything sound simple when it's not. It is simple. We just keep making it complicated. She shifted, resting her head on his chest. Can we just stay like this? Just for tonight? No planning, no worrying, just this? Yeah, we can do that. So they did. They fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in each other, and for the first time in weeks, Mason slept through the night. When he woke up, Victoria was still there. Hair a mess, face creased from his shirt, still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. She opened her eyes. Hi. Hi. I should probably go home. Shower. Change. Probably. Are you going to let me go? No. She smiled. Good. They stayed on the couch for another hour, just talking, just being. And Mason realized that this quiet morning, this easy peace, was what he'd been missing his entire life. Later, when Victoria finally went back to her house, and Mason started making coffee, his phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Is Victoria back? Mason smiled and typed, Yeah, she's back. Chloe. Good. I like her. Mason. Me too, kid. Me too. The next few weeks felt like living in a snow globe someone kept shaking. Good days mixed with hard ones, easy mornings followed by difficult nights, and through it all, Mason and Victoria kept showing up. Victoria started spending more time at Mason's house than her own. Not officially moving in, just gradually accumulating things. A toothbrush in the bathroom, a coffee mug in the cabinet, a laptop charger that lived permanently plugged in next to the couch. Chloe noticed immediately. Victoria has a lot of stuff here, she observed one morning, examining the expensive face cream that had appeared next to Mason's generic drugstore moisturizer. She does, Mason agreed. Is she moving in? We haven't talked about it. Why not? Because it's complicated. Chloe rolled her eyes with the exasperation of someone far older than 7. You guys say that about everything. She wasn't wrong. The truth was, Mason and Victoria existed in a strange liminal space where they were together but not officially together, committed but not defined, building something that didn't have a name yet. Victoria still flew to New York twice a month for board meetings. Mason still had his week-on, week-off custody arrangement with Rachel. They were fitting their lives together like puzzle pieces that almost matched, but not quite. It worked, mostly. Then March came, and with it, a complication neither of them had anticipated. Mason was at Grateful Bread on a Wednesday morning, halfway through reviewing a set of plans for a restaurant renovation, when his phone rang. Unknown number, New York area code. He almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Mason Reed? A man's voice, smooth, confident, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who was used to being listened to. Yes. Who's this? Damien Hale, Victoria's husband. Mason's blood went cold. Ex-husband. Right, ex-husband. A pause. I need to talk to you about Victoria. I don't think that's appropriate. Probably not, but I'm going to anyway. Damien sounded amused. You're the guy she ran to, right? The one in Colorado? I'm not having this conversation. Just hear me out, 5 minutes. Then you can hang up and tell Victoria I'm an asshole. I'm sure she's already told you that anyway. Mason should have hung up, should have blocked the number and forgotten it ever happened. Instead, he said, 5 minutes. I'll make it quick. Victoria and I were married for 8 years. Not all of them were bad. Some were actually good. Great even. Damien's tone shifted, became less performative. But then her dad died and she took over the company and everything changed. She became someone I didn't recognize, driven, relentless, impossible to reach. That's what happens when you build an empire, Mason said. I know, I'm not blaming her, I'm just explaining. Damien exhaled. The divorce was mutual. We wanted different things. She wanted to conquer the world. I wanted a partner who came home at night. Neither of us was wrong. We just weren't right for each other. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been in therapy for the past 6 months, working through my shit, understanding my part in why things fell apart. Another pause. And I realized I never actually fought for her. Not really, I just let her go because it was easier than doing the hard work. Mason's stomach was starting to hurt. What do you want, Damien? I want another chance. You're divorced. Divorce can be undone. She doesn't want you back. Are you sure about that? Mason wasn't sure about anything anymore. I'm flying to Aspen next week, Damien continued. I'm going to ask her to come back to New York, to give us another shot, properly this time. His voice softened. I'm not calling to threaten you or mark territory or whatever you're thinking. I'm calling because Victoria deserves to make an informed choice. And she can't do that if she doesn't know I've changed. She knows who you are. She knows who I was. People change, Mason. You of all people should understand that. The line went dead. Mason sat there, staring at his phone, feeling like he'd just been punched. He should tell Victoria immediately, should warn her that Damien was coming. But something stopped him. What if Damien was right? What if Victoria did deserve to know he'd changed? What if Mason's interference would be the thing that made her resent him? He spent the rest of the day spiraling, checking his phone every 5 minutes, waiting for Victoria to text and say Damien had called her too. But she didn't. That evening, Victoria came over with Thai food and a bottle of wine she claimed was pretty good for Colorado. You're a wine snob now? Mason asked, trying to sound normal. I've always been a wine snob. You're just noticing. They ate on the couch. Chloe was with Rachel, so it was just the two of them. And normally Mason would have loved the quiet intimacy of it. But tonight his mind was elsewhere. You're distracted, Victoria said, setting down her fork. Sorry, work stuff. Liar. You get a specific look when you're thinking about work. This is different. What look is that? Stressed but focused. Right now you look stressed and far away. She shifted to face him. What's going on? Mason set down his own fork. He could lie. Should lie. Keep Damien's call to himself and let Victoria make her choices without outside pressure. But they'd promised each other honesty, even when it was hard. Damien called me today, Mason said. Victoria went very still. What? He called. Said he's been in therapy. Said he's changed. Said he's coming to Aspen to ask you for another chance. He said all that to you? Yeah. And you're just telling me now? I didn't know how. Victoria stood up, started pacing. What the hell is he thinking? Calling you? That's insane. Is it? She stopped. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know. Maybe he's right. Maybe you deserve to know he's changed. I don't care if he's changed. Are you sure? Victoria's eyes flashed. Are you seriously asking me that? I'm asking if you've thought about it, about what your life would look like if you went back to him. I'm not going back to him. But you're going back to New York eventually. Your company is there. Your life is there. My life is here. Is it? Mason stood up too. Because most of your stuff is still in New York. You still fly back twice a month. Your assistant still calls you every day with decisions that need your approval. So what? You want me to quit? Sell the company? Pretend I didn't spend a decade building something from nothing? I want you to be honest about what you actually want. I want this, us. Do you? Or do you want the idea of us? The small-town fantasy that lets you pretend you're not who you actually are? Victoria flinched like he'd slapped her. That's not fair. Isn't it? Every time things get real, you pull back. Every time I try to plan past next week, you change the subject. You're here, but you're not really here. I'm doing the best I can. I know, but maybe your best isn't enough. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and irreversible. Victoria's face went white. If that's how you feel, then maybe I should go. Maybe you should. She grabbed her coat and bag, moving like she was on autopilot. Mason wanted to take it back, to tell her he didn't mean it, but his pride kept his mouth shut. Victoria stopped at the door. For what it's worth, I never wanted the fantasy. I wanted you, the real you. But apparently that's not good enough either. Then she was gone. Mason stood in his empty house, surrounded by half-eaten Thai food and the wine Victoria had brought, and wondered what the hell was wrong with him. He didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the fight over and over. Morning came too early and too bright. Mason made coffee, burned toast, gave up on breakfast entirely. His phone rang. Rachel. Can you take Chloe today? She asked without preamble. Mark's mom fell. We need to drive to Denver. Is she okay? Broken hip. She'll be fine, but we need to be there. Yeah, of course. I'll come get her. He picked up Chloe 20 minutes later. She climbed into the truck with her backpack and a stuffed elephant she only carried when she was anxious. Is Mark's grandma gonna die? She asked. No, baby. She just needs surgery. But she's old. She's going to be fine. Chloe didn't look convinced, but she nodded. They drove home in silence. Mason made her lunch. She picked at it. Dad? Yeah? Did you and Victoria break up? Mason's chest tightened. What makes you think that? You look sad, and she didn't come by this morning. We had a fight. About what? Grown-up stuff. Chloe set down her sandwich. Are you going to fix it? I don't know if I can. Why not? Because sometimes people want different things, and no matter how much they care about each other, it doesn't work. Chloe thought about this. Do you love her? The question hit Mason like a freight train. He'd been so careful not to use that word, even in his own head. Love meant commitment. Love meant vulnerability. Love meant the possibility of losing everything. But looking at his daughter's serious face, he couldn't lie. Yeah, I do. Did you tell her? No? Why not? Because I'm scared. Of what? Of her leaving, Chloe frowned. But she's going to leave anyway if you don't tell her, so you might as well be brave. Mason pulled her into a hug. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't listen. He laughed despite everything. That afternoon, Mason tried to work, gave up after an hour, tried to distract himself with TV. That didn't work either. Around 3, there was a knock at the door. Mason's heart jumped. Victoria. He opened the door. It wasn't Victoria. It was a man in an expensive suit and a cashmere coat, looking deeply uncomfortable in the snow. "Mason Reed?" the man asked. "Yeah." "Damien Hale." He extended a hand. Mason stared at it. "You said you were coming next week." "I lied." Damien dropped his hand. "Can we talk?" "No." 5 minutes. Please." Against his better judgment, Mason stepped aside. Damien came in, looking around the small house with obvious curiosity. His gaze landed on Chloe, who was watching from the living room with wide eyes. "You must be Chloe," Damien said. "Who are you?" she asked. "A friend of Victoria's." "Are you her ex-husband?" Damien blinked. "How did you, I'm 7, not stupid." Mason almost smiled despite himself. "Chloe, go upstairs." "But now?" She went, but slowly, clearly listening from the landing. Damien turned to Mason. "She's spirited." "What do you want, Damien?" "To see what I'm up against." "This isn't a competition, isn't it?" Damien walked over to the kitchen window, looking across the street at Victoria's house. "I spent 8 years with her, built a life with her. And then I let her go because I was too proud to admit I needed her more than I needed to be right." He turned back. "I'm not making that mistake again." "She doesn't want you back." "How do you know?" "Because she told me." "When? Before or after you accused her of not being fully committed?" Mason went cold. "How did you—" "She called me last night, after your fight. She was crying." Damien's expression was unreadable. "Do you know how rare it is for Victoria to cry? In 8 years of marriage, I saw her cry 3 times. Her father's death, her mother's death, and the day I asked for a divorce." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're making the same mistake I made, pushing her away because you're scared she'll leave anyway, testing her to see if she'll stay." Damien stepped closer. "But here's the thing, Victoria doesn't respond to tests, she responds to certainty. She needs to know you're all in, no reservations, no escape routes. Otherwise, she'll convince herself she's protecting you by leaving first." "I am all in." "Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you're hedging just as much as she is." Mason wanted to argue, wanted to tell Damien he was wrong, that he didn't know anything about their relationship. But he couldn't, because Damien was right. "What do you want from me?" Mason asked quietly. "Nothing. I just wanted to see if you're worth it." Damien headed for the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I think you are. You're good for her in ways I never was. She's softer with you, more herself." "Then why are you here? Why try to win her back?" "Because I love her. And sometimes love makes you selfish." Damien pulled on his coat. "But I'm not going to sabotage what you have. If she chooses you, I'll accept it. But she needs to make that choice knowing all her options." He left. Mason stood there, processing, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Chloe came downstairs. "I don't like him." "Me neither, kid." "Are you going to fight for Victoria?" "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You just have to tell her you love her." "It's not that simple." "Why do adults always say that?" Chloe grabbed his hand. "It is that simple. You love her. She loves you. Just say it." Mason looked at his daughter, so certain, so unafraid. "When did you get so brave?" he asked. "I'm not brave. I'm just not stupid." Mason grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" Chloe asked. "To do something I should have done weeks ago." "Can I come?" "No, stay here. I'll be back." He crossed the street and knocked on Victoria's door. No answer. He knocked again. "Victoria, I know you're in there. Please, just let me talk to you." The door opened. Victoria looked terrible. Red eyes, hair a mess, still in yesterday's clothes. "What?" she said flatly. "I love you." She blinked. "What?" "I love you. I have loved you since we were 20 years old, and I was too scared to say it. I loved you when you married someone else. I loved you when I married someone else. I loved you every single day for 10 years, and I'm done pretending I don't." Victoria just stared at him. "I'm sorry," Mason continued, "for last night, for pushing you away, for making you feel like you have to choose between your life and me. You don't. We'll figure it out. However we have to." "Mason, I don't care if you have to fly to New York every week. I don't care if we have to do long distance sometimes. I don't care about any of it, As long as I know you're mine and I'm yours, and we're not giving up. Tears were sliding down Victoria's face. Damien came to see me, Mason said. He told me you called him, that you were crying. He had no right. He did, because he loves you too, and he's going to ask you to come back to him, to give him another chance. Mason took her hands. And you should. Not because I want you to, but because you deserve to make that choice with all the information. If there's any part of you that still loves him, that thinks you could be happy with him, then you owe it to yourself to explore that. Victoria was crying harder now. You're telling me to consider getting back with my ex-husband? I'm telling you I love you enough to let you make your own choice, even if that choice isn't me. You're an idiot. Probably. I don't love Damien. I don't want Damien. I want you. She pulled her hands free and grabbed his face. I called him because I was hurt and stupid, and I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for falling this hard this fast. And he did. He told me to stop running, to stop sabotaging, to choose what I actually want instead of what I think I should want. And what do you want? This, you, us, all of it. She kissed him, hard and desperate. I love you. I have loved you since junior year when you stayed up all night helping me fix my structural analysis project, even though you had your own work to do. I loved you when I got engaged. I loved you through my whole marriage. I loved you when I drove to Aspen hoping I'd find the courage to tell you. Mason kissed her back, tasting salt and relief. When they broke apart, Victoria was smiling through her tears. So what now? She asked. Now we stop being idiots. That's your plan. That's my plan. She laughed, and it sounded like coming home. They stood there in her doorway, holding each other, while snow started falling around them. Damien's going to be disappointed, Victoria said. He'll survive. He flew all the way to Colorado. Not my problem. Victoria pulled back, studying his face. You really meant it? About letting me choose? Every word. Even though it might have meant losing me? Especially because of that. She kissed him again, softer this time. I choose you, in case that wasn't clear. It's pretty clear. Good. They went inside. Mason called Chloe and told her he'd be home soon. Victoria made coffee. They sat on her couch, not talking, just being together. I need to tell you something, Victoria said finally. Okay. I'm selling the company. Mason sat up. What? Not all of it, just the majority stake. I'm keeping enough to stay on the board, but I'm stepping back. Really stepping back this time. Victoria, you don't have to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. She turned to face him. I built that company to prove something. To my father, to myself, to everyone who said I couldn't. And I did. I proved it. But now I'm holding on to it out of fear, not passion. Fear that if I let it go, I'll lose my identity. That I won't know who I am without it. And do you know who you are? I'm figuring it out. But I know I'm more than my job title, more than my net worth, more than the empire I built. She took his hand. I want to wake up in the morning and not immediately check my phone. I want to have breakfast with you and Chloe without my assistant calling every 5 minutes. I want to build something that actually makes me happy instead of just successful. What would you build? I don't know yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll just exist for a while. Figure out what I actually like doing when I'm not trying to conquer the world. Mason pulled her close. For what it's worth, I think you're terrifying when you're determined. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? Best terrifying. She smiled against his chest. They stayed like that until the sun went down and Mason had to go home to Chloe. But this time when they said goodbye, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something real. The next day, Damien flew back to New York without ever speaking to Victoria in person. He sent a single text. I'm happy for you, really. Don't screw it up. Victoria showed it to Mason. They both laughed. Think he means it? Mason asked. Probably. Damien's a lot of things, but he's not petty. Just selfish? We're all selfish about the people we love. Mason kissed her temple. Fair point. That evening, the three of them had dinner together. Mason cooked pasta. Chloe talked nonstop about school. Victoria listened like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever heard. After Chloe went to bed, Mason and Victoria sat on the back porch despite the cold. I'm scared, Victoria said quietly. Of what? Of screwing this up. Of disappointing you. Of not being enough. You're enough. You don't know that. I do. Mason turned to face her. You're messy and complicated and stubborn as hell. You overthink everything. You try to control things you can't control. You put your keys in the refrigerator. Where is this going? And you're exactly what I need, what we need. Not in spite of all that, but because of it. Victoria's eyes were bright. I don't deserve you. Good thing love isn't about deserving. She laughed and kissed him, and Mason thought maybe they'd finally figured it out. Not the perfect version, not the easy version, just the real one. And that was enough. The thing about finally getting what you want, Mason realized, is that it doesn't come with a manual. There's no instruction booklet titled How to Build a Life with Someone You've Loved for a Decade. You just wake up one morning and try not to mess it up. March dissolved into April. The snow started melting, revealing the brown grass underneath. Victoria's house across the street stayed dark most nights because she was at Mason's, sprawled on his couch with her laptop, arguing with him about whether his furniture was aggressively beige or pleasantly neutral. It's beige, she said one evening, gesturing at the couch. Aggressively beige. Like someone went to a furniture store and said, "Show me everything that screams divorced dad trying not to make waves." Mason looked up from the structural plans he was reviewing. I like beige. It's calming. It's boring. Not everything has to make a statement. Everything you own makes a statement. Yours just happens to be I've given up. Chloe wandered in, already in her pajamas. I think the couch is nice. Thank you, Mason said. But it is really beige, Chloe added. Traitor. Victoria grinned. See, even the 7-year-old knows. The 7-year-old should be asleep. I'm not tired. You're always tired at 8:30. Not tonight. Mason closed his laptop. What's going on? Chloe picked at the hem of her pajama shirt. Emma's parents got back together. Okay. She said her dad moved back in and now everything's normal again. Mason exchanged a look with Victoria. What are you asking, sweetie? Are you and Mom going to get back together? No, baby, we're not. Why not? If Emma's parents could fix it, because your mom and I weren't right for each other. We tried for a long time, but sometimes trying isn't enough. Mason pulled Chloe onto his lap. But that doesn't mean we don't both love you more than anything. I know. Chloe was quiet for a moment. Is Victoria going to live here? Mason looked at Victoria. They hadn't talked about it. Not really. It had just sort of happened gradually, like weather changing. We haven't decided yet, Victoria said carefully. But you're here every night. I am. And you have a toothbrush in our bathroom. That's true. So you basically live here already. Victoria laughed despite herself. I suppose I do. Chloe turned to Mason. Is that okay? That she lives here? Yeah, is it okay with you? Chloe thought about it with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Yeah, I like it when she's here. The house feels less empty. Something cracked open in Mason's chest. Okay then, he said quietly. Okay then what? Chloe asked. Okay, then Victoria lives here now. Victoria's head snapped up. Mason! Unless you don't want to, he added quickly. We can keep doing what we're doing. I just meant, I want to, Victoria said. I definitely want to. Chloe beamed. Can we paint my room? Victoria said she'd help me pick colors. When did you two discuss this? Last week. She said purple and yellow would look cool together. Purple and yellow? Trust me, Victoria said. It'll work. Mason looked between them, these two people who'd somehow become his entire world, and decided he didn't care what color Chloe's room was as long as they were all under the same roof. Fine, purple and yellow. Chloe squealed and ran upstairs to look at paint samples on her tablet. Victoria moved over to the couch, curling up next to Mason. That was smooth. What was? Asking me to move in via our daughter's interior design preferences. Our daughter? Victoria froze. I didn't mean, Mason kissed her. I like the sound of that. Yeah? Yeah. They sat there, holding each other, listening to Chloe talk to herself upstairs about accent walls. I'm terrified, Victoria whispered. Of what? Of being a stepmom. Of screwing up a kid who's already been through enough. You're not going to screw her up. You don't know that. I know you love her. That's enough. Victoria pulled back. Is it? Love doesn't make you a good parent. I've seen plenty of people love their kids and still damage them. So have I, but you're not them. Mason cupped her face. You show up. You listen. You care about what she thinks. That's more than a lot of parents manage. What if she decides she hates me? She won't. But what if she does? Then we'll deal with it together. Victoria closed her eyes. I've never been this scared of anything. Not business deals, not board meetings, not even my divorce. This is different. Because it matters. Because it matters, she agreed. They stayed like that until Chloe came back downstairs with 17 different purple paint samples and a plan for her room that involved glow-in-the-dark stars and a reading nook. The next morning, Mason called Rachel. I need to tell you something, he said. Okay. Rachel sounded wary. Victoria's moving in. Silence. Rachel? I'm here. Just processing. A pause. Are you sure about this? Yeah, I am. Chloe's okay with it? It was partially her idea. Rachel laughed. Of course it was. She's been talking about Victoria non-stop. Victoria says this, Victoria thinks that. I was wondering when you'd make it official. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? You're happy. Chloe's happy. That's all I wanted for both of you. Her voice softened. I'm glad you found someone, Mason. Really. Thanks. But if she hurts Chloe, she won't. I know. I'm just doing my mom thing. Rachel exhaled. Invite me over sometime. I want to meet her properly. You want to meet my girlfriend? Is that weird? Little bit. We'll get over it. We're adults. We can have dinner without it being awkward. Mason wasn't convinced, but he agreed anyway. A week later, Rachel and Mark came over. Victoria cooked, which surprised everyone, including herself. I didn't know you could cook, Mason said, watching her plate salmon with the precision of a surgeon. I took classes. In New York. When I was trying to save my marriage. She said it matter-of-factly, like it was ancient history. Turns out cooking for someone who doesn't appreciate it is pretty depressing. I appreciate it. I know you do. Dinner was only slightly awkward. Rachel was polite. Victoria was polite. Mark was aggressively friendly in the way people are when they're trying too hard. Chloe talked non-stop about her purple and yellow room, which they'd started painting the weekend before. After dinner, while Mason and Mark were cleaning up, Rachel pulled Victoria aside. Can we talk? Rachel asked. Sure. They went out to the back porch. Mason watched through the window, trying not to obviously eavesdrop. I'm not here to give you a hard time, Rachel started. Okay. I just need to say something, and then we can all move on and pretend this conversation never happened. Victoria waited. Chloe's already been through one divorce, Rachel said quietly. She's resilient, but she's not invincible. If you're going to be in her life, you need to be all in. Not when it's convenient, not when it's easy. All in. I understand. Do you? Because walking away from a business deal is different from walking away from a kid. There's no exit strategy that doesn't leave damage. I'm not walking away. You say that now, but what happens when the novelty wears off? When being a stepmom stops being this exciting new thing and becomes grocery shopping and permission slips and school plays where she has 2 lines and forgets one of them? Victoria met Rachel's eyes. Then I'll be there for the grocery shopping and the permission slips and the school plays. All of it. Why should I believe you? Because I know what it's like to grow up with a parent who was physically there but emotionally gone. My dad loved me, but he loved his company more. I spent my whole childhood trying to earn his attention. Victoria's voice was steady. I'm not doing that to Chloe. If I'm in, I'm in. Completely. Rachel studied her for a long moment. Okay? Okay? Okay. Rachel smiled slightly. For what it's worth, she really does love you. And Mason, he's different with you, lighter, like he finally figured out how to breathe properly. He's different with you too, calmer, like he's not constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. We were never right for each other, but we made a pretty great kid. You did. They went back inside. Mason raised his eyebrows at Victoria. She gave him a small nod. Later, after Rachel and Mark left and Chloe was asleep, Victoria and Mason sat on the couch with glasses of wine. What did Rachel say to you? Mason asked. That if I hurt Chloe, she'll destroy me. She said that? Not in those words, but the implication was clear. And I told her I'm not going anywhere. Victoria took a sip of wine. I meant it. I know I don't have a great track record with commitment, but this, you and Chloe, this is different. How? Because for the first time in my life, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just trying to be present. She set down her glass. I sold my stake in the company yesterday. Officially. Mason sat up. What? I told you I was going to. I did. I thought you meant eventually. Eventually was taking too long. Victoria turned to face him. I kept finding reasons to hold on. One more deal, one more quarter, one more board meeting. But then I realized I was doing the same thing I did in my marriage, staying out of obligation instead of desire. You loved that company. I did. But I don't anymore. Or maybe I do, but not enough to sacrifice this. She gestured between them. Not enough to spend half my life on planes, not enough to miss Chloe's soccer games or Tuesday morning pastries or fighting with you about beige couches. Mason pulled her close. What are you going to do now? I have no idea. Isn't that terrifying? Little bit. I've never not had a plan before. Never just existed without an agenda. Welcome to the club. They sat there drinking wine, watching snow fall outside even though it was April and the snow should have stopped weeks ago. I'm glad you're here, Mason said quietly. Me too. Even though my couch is aggressively beige, even though... May came with warmer weather and Chloe's 8th birthday. They threw a party in the backyard. Emma came, despite being basically the worst. So did half of Chloe's class, and what felt like every parent in Aspen. Victoria spent the entire party managing chaos with the efficiency of someone who'd run board meetings. She organized games, cut cake, and mediated a dispute between two kids fighting over the last slice of pizza. You're good at this, Rachel observed, watching Victoria separate the pizza combatants. I'm good at logistics. Turns out kids' birthday parties are just tiny corporate events. Rachel laughed. That's one way to look at it. Later, after the party wound down and the last parent picked up their sugar-crashed child, Chloe opened presents. She got books, art supplies, a soccer ball, and from Victoria, a telescope. So you can see the stars better, Victoria explained, from your reading nook. Chloe threw her arms around Victoria's waist. Thank you. Victoria froze for half a second, then hugged back. When she pulled away, her eyes were wet. That night, after Chloe fell asleep surrounded by wrapping paper and new books, Mason found Victoria on the back porch. You okay? He asked. She hugged me. She hugs you all the time. Not like that. That was different. Victoria wiped her eyes. That was a real hug. Not a polite hug or an obligatory hug. A real one. Mason sat down next to her. You're part of the family now. Of course she hugs you. I've never been part of a family. Not really. My parents loved me, but we didn't do hugs and family dinners and birthday parties. We did business dinners and networking events and carefully orchestrated photo opportunities. Sounds lonely. It was. Victoria leaned against him. I didn't realize how lonely until I had this. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars that Chloe would soon be watching through her new telescope. I need to tell you something, Victoria said. Okay. I'm scared I'm going to mess this up. Not in a vague future sense, in a very immediate, practical sense. I don't know how to be a stepmom. I don't know the rules. I don't know when to step in and when to back off. Neither do I. I barely know how to be a regular parent. But you're her dad. You get instincts. Instincts are just glorified guesses. Mason took her hand. You're doing fine. Better than fine. What if she starts resenting me? What if I become the evil stepmom? You won't. You don't know that. I do. Because you care enough to worry about it. The evil stepmoms don't worry. Victoria smiled despite herself. That's terrible logic. But it's true. She rested her head on his shoulder. I love you. I love you too. No, I mean, she sat up. I love you in a way that terrifies me. I love you in a way that makes me want to be better. Not perfect, just better. I love you enough to stay even when it's hard, even when I want to run, Even when I mess up, which I will. Mason kissed her. I know. I love you the same way. Really? Really? They stayed on the porch until the cold drove them inside. Chloe was asleep in her room, telescope positioned by the window. Mason and Victoria went to bed, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Mason felt completely at peace. Summer arrived with the kind of warmth that made Aspen feel like a different planet. Victoria started working on a new project, a consulting firm that let her work remotely, choose her clients, and actually have a life outside of conference rooms. It's weird, she told Mason one morning at Grateful Bread. Having time. I keep thinking I should be doing something urgent. This is something urgent. Coffee with me. You know what I mean. I do, but you're allowed to have a life that isn't just work. I'm still figuring out what that looks like. They were interrupted by Chloe, who'd convinced them to bring her along even though it was summer break and she should have been sleeping in. Can we get a dog? She asked, appearing at their table with a chocolate croissant. No, Mason said automatically. What? Why not? Because dogs are a lot of work. I'll take care of it. That's what every kid says. But I mean it. Victoria was trying not to laugh. What? Mason asked her. Nothing. You're just very predictable. How am I predictable? Every parent has this exact conversation. Kid wants dog. Parent says no. Kid promises to take care of it. Parent knows they'll end up doing all the work. See, Chloe said, Victoria gets it. Victoria's not helping your case. Actually, Victoria said, I think we should get a dog. Mason stared at her. What? A dog. I think it's a good idea. Since when? Since now. Victoria turned to Chloe. What kind of dog do you want? A rescue. Emma got a rescue and it's the best dog ever. Then we'll get a rescue. We? Mason said. We, Victoria confirmed. You, me, Chloe, and a dog, a family. Chloe was vibrating with excitement. Really? 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 Really, really. Mason knew when he was outnumbered. Fine. We'll get a dog. Chloe screamed and hugged Victoria, then Mason, then ran off to Google rescue shelters. You just committed us to a decade of vet bills, Mason said. I know. And early morning walks. I know that too. And we'll be the ones doing all the work. Obviously, Victoria smiled. But did you see her face? Mason had seen her face. Yeah. Worth it? Worth it. They got the dog 2 weeks later. A mutt from the shelter with wiry fur and one ear that stuck up and one that flopped down. Chloe named her Pancake, for reasons she refused to explain. Pancake was chaos incarnate. She chewed Mason's work boots. She knocked over Victoria's expensive coffee. She woke them up at 5 a.m. demanding walks. She was perfect. August came too fast. Chloe started 3rd grade. Mason picked up more freelance work. Victoria's consulting firm actually took off, which surprised her more than anyone. I have 3 clients, she told Mason one night, sounding baffled. Real clients who are paying real money for my advice. Why is that surprising? Because I'm not even trying, I'm just existing, and people want to work with me anyway. Turns out you're good at what you do. I was good at what I did before too. But this is different. This feels like mine, not something I inherited or something I built out of obligation. Mine. Mason pulled her close. I'm proud of you. For what? Having 3 clients? For figuring out who you are without the empire. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I'm still figuring it out, but I like who I'm becoming. Me too. They fell into a rhythm. Not perfect, not smooth, but theirs. Mason worked. Victoria consulted. Chloe went to school and played soccer and taught pancake tricks that mostly involved begging for treats. They fought sometimes, about stupid things like whose turn it was to take out the trash, and serious things like how to handle Chloe's struggles with math. But they always came back together, always talked it through, always chose each other. In September, Rachel got engaged to Mark. Chloe was thrilled. Mason was genuinely happy for them. Victoria helped Rachel pick out wedding invitations, which felt surreal, but also right. Who would have thought, Rachel said, flipping through samples, that my ex-husband's girlfriend would be helping me plan my wedding? Life's weird, Victoria agreed. It is. Rachel looked at her. Thank you. For being good to Chloe. For being good to Mason. He makes it easy. He does. But still. Thank you. October brought snow earlier than usual. Mason and Victoria were on the back porch, bundled in blankets, watching it fall. Can I ask you something? Mason said. Always. Are you happy? Victoria thought about it. Yeah, I am. Are you? Yeah. That's it? Just yeah? What else is there? Victoria smiled. Nothing. I guess I just expected happiness to be more complicated. Why? Because everything else has been. Mason pulled her closer. Maybe we earned the simple version. Maybe we did. They sat there until Chloe yelled that hot chocolate was ready and Pancake had somehow gotten into the marshmallows. Inside, the house was warm and chaotic and exactly what home should be. That night, after Chloe and Pancake were both asleep, Mason pulled Victoria onto the couch. I need to tell you something, he said. That sounds ominous. It's not. At least I hope it's not. He took a breath. I want to marry you. Victoria went very still. What? Not right now. Not tomorrow. Whenever you're ready, or never, if that's what you want. I just need you to know that this is it for me. You're it for me. Mason, I know we've both been married before. I know we said we wouldn't rush into anything, but I've been in love with you for 10 years, and I don't want to waste another minute pretending this is casual or temporary or anything other than exactly what it is. Victoria's eyes were bright. Which is? Forever. If you'll have me. She kissed him, hard and desperate and full of 10 years of want. When she pulled back, she was crying. Yes. 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 I'll marry you. Whenever. However. Yes. Mason kissed her again, and it felt like every door he'd been too scared to open finally swinging wide. They didn't tell anyone right away, just kept it between them for a few days, this secret that was theirs alone. But eventually they told Chloe. We're getting married, Mason said one morning at breakfast. Chloe looked up from her cereal. Okay. Okay? That's it? What else am I supposed to say? I don't know, something more than okay. You guys basically already act married. This just makes it official. She took another bite of cereal. Can I be in the wedding? Of course, Victoria said. And can Pancake? Absolutely not. But no? Chloe sighed dramatically, but didn't push it. They got married in December, on a Saturday when the snow was falling soft and steady. Nothing fancy. Just them. Chloe, Rachel, and Mark, a handful of friends, and an officiant who kept making terrible jokes about cold feet. Victoria wore a simple dress. Mason wore a suit. Chloe wore purple and yellow, obviously. When the officiant asked if they had vows, Mason pulled out a piece of paper. I wrote something, he said, hands shaking slightly. It's probably terrible, but just read it, Victoria said softly. Okay, he cleared his throat. Victoria, I have loved you since we were 22 years old and too stupid to admit it. I loved you when you married someone else. I loved you when I married someone else. I loved you through 10 years and 2 failed marriages and enough regret to fill this whole mountain. He looked up at her. But I don't regret any of it, because all of it led us here. And here is exactly where I want to be, with you, always. Victoria was crying. I didn't write anything. That's okay. No, I mean, I did, but it's in my head. She took his hands. Mason, you taught me that love isn't about perfect timing or grand gestures. It's about showing up. It's about fixing burst pipes and arguing about coffee makers and choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She smiled through tears. I choose you, today and every day after, forever. The officiant pronounced them married. Mason kissed his wife. Chloe cheered. Pancake barked from where Rachel was holding her back. It was perfect in the way real things are perfect. Messy and imperfect and absolutely right. That night, after the small reception at their house, after the guests left and Chloe fell asleep and Pancake finally stopped running in circles, Mason and Victoria stood on the back porch. We did it, Victoria said. We did. You're stuck with me now. I can live with that. She leaned against him, watching snow fall over the mountains. Do you ever think about the alternate version? The one where we told each other how we felt in college? Sometimes. Do you think we would have made it? No? Victoria looked up at him. Really? Really, we weren't ready. We needed the 10 years. We needed the failed marriages and the heartbreak and the growing up. He kissed the top of her head. We needed to become the people we are now, the ones capable of this. That's a very mature perspective. I have my moments. Rare moments. Hey, she laughed and kissed him. They stayed outside until the cold became unbearable, then went inside to their warm house, their sleeping daughter, their ridiculous dog, their imperfect, perfect life. Mason had spent years convincing himself he didn't need anything more than stability, than routine, than the careful, controlled existence he'd built after his divorce. And then Victoria had moved across the street and destroyed all of it. She'd brought chaos and complications and a love so fierce it terrified him. She'd brought partnership and passion and the kind of happiness he'd stopped believing existed. She'd brought herself, messy and brilliant and real. And in doing so, she'd brought him back to life. Later, as they lay in bed, Victoria whispered, "Are you awake?" "Yeah. I'm happy." "Me too." Like genuinely, completely, inexplicably happy. Good. I didn't think I could feel this way again. After Damien, after the divorce, I thought maybe I was just broken, that I'd lost the ability to be happy. Mason pulled her closer. You were never broken. Just waiting. For what? For this. For us. For the right time. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Do you believe in timing? That things happen when they're supposed to? I don't know. But I know I wouldn't trade these 10 years for anything. Because they gave us Chloe. And they made us who we are. And they taught us that love isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about imperfect people choosing each other anyway. That's very philosophical for midnight. I'm a deep guy. Occasionally. He tickled her. She shrieked and smacked him. Pancake woke up and barked. Chloe yelled from her room to keep it down. They fell asleep laughing, tangled together, exactly where they were meant to be. Outside, snow continued falling. The mountains stood silent and eternal. The town slept. And in a small house on a quiet street, a family that had taken 10 years and 2 continents and countless mistakes to find each other finally rested, complete. Because that's the thing about real love. It doesn't arrive on schedule. It doesn't follow the plan. It doesn't care about timing or convenience or whether you're ready. It just shows up one day, moving in across the street, and it stays until you finally stop running and let yourself fall. And if you're very lucky, if you're brave enough to choose it over fear, it gives you everything you never knew you needed. A partner who sees you. A child who teaches you. A dog who destroys your shoes. A life that's messy and complicated and absolutely worth it. Mason and Victoria had learned that lesson the hard way, but they'd learned it, and that made all the difference.